And three, two, one. We are back for another episode of Fuck It, We'll Fix It in Post. I have my esteemed colleagues here with me, Victoria V.A. Jones and Karsten Hype Ferguson. How are you all today?
Good.
That'll just be an awkward silence I delete, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm good. It's Ferguson, man. Ferguson.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm the hype man. Come on.
We'll keep it, though.
We'll make it.
F it.
Anyway,
We'll
so
fix it in post.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post.
So now today we have another guest with us who is a graphic designer, an AP award winner, and is currently a broadcast engineer for Channel 4 News in Nashville, Russ Johnson. So how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, thanks. How are you?
I am great. I got your name right then.
Oh, yes.
Just making sure since I got everybody else's wrong. So starting off, what got you interested in the world of television?
When I was a little kid, I watched this show called Reading Rainbow, and it was LeVar Burton reading kids' books to kids my age. And they always went like on a field trip or something. And one episode, they went behind the scenes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I thought it was the coolest thing I had ever seen in my life. And then something like 20 years later, 25 years later, I was on campus at college and ran into a guy who, long story short, said, "Oh, yeah, we work at the TV station on campus." The heck? There's a TV station on campus and students can get involved? I cut all my classes for the whole day and just hung out with them.
So, like, when you went to college, what did you originally go for?
I went for political science.
Okay.
Oh, God.
I was working, yeah. I had gotten into politics. I was working on a congressional campaign at the time. Wasn't even somebody in my party, but I needed some experience. I thought that's where my life was going to go. And at one point, the candidate said to me, "You have to get a degree. Don't come back here until after you've enrolled at MTSU." So I did.
Just imagine if you were working in politics right now.
That's
Okay.
so far past nightmare.
Right.
Take a look. It's in a book.
So, on to the next. You are a graphic designer. Let's talk about
dabble.
graphics.
Yeah, sure.
What do you love the most about graphic design?
I love communicating with people. The idea that I can take something that's this really super complicated, concept, and it takes some time and thinking and effort, but I can make it click for somebody where they can understand something now that they wouldn't have understood before. That's what I love about design. It's all about communication.
It's alchemy.
A little bit.
Take a bunch of raw stuff and
Right.
make it into something that somebody.
So what kind of works have you done in graphic design?
Well, the biggest quantity of stuff that I've done actually has been at Channel 4 because I got hired there as a graphic designer. So when I went in, one of their graphics people had to take a month off for surgery, and they needed me there for a solid month. So I sat in their office 8 hours a day, and I just did graphics to go with news stories. And I learned so much about actually doing the communication that I wanted to be a part of during that period. It was fantastic. The most fun I've had on the job, probably at any job I've ever gotten paid for.
So, you do the lower thirds or like the transitions between stories?
Kind of. Usually they have a big, complicated, and we've actually upgraded this since I've been in engineering, big computer system. A couple different companies make them. We used to use Viz when I was in graphics. Now we use a company called Chiron. And they have a bunch of computer programs in there. You preload a bunch of art like the lower thirds, and it includes a little plug-in that goes into your news writing program. We use iNews at Channel 4. And so as you're writing your news story, you add in the lower third, and it does all of that kind of graphic for you. So lower thirds, over-the-shoulder graphics, banners across the top, full screens, all of that stuff is pre-composed. And you just, for like an over-the-shoulder graphic, which we don't do anymore, but other stations still do, you'd have your graphics guy, like I did when I started. you'd say, here, put this logo in the lower third, and we just add it in, and they know how to find it, and it's all done. I did a little bit of that. The stuff that I had the most fun with was designing for what we called our big board. We had this big touch screen. It was like a 50-inch plasma touch screen.
That's what's up.
Okay.
Oh God, it was. And when we finally got rid of it, we had to move it. It was like 500 pounds. It took 6 people to move the thing.
Oh.
Man.
But it was a standard HD 1080 monitor, and we could put literally anything in it we wanted. So I got to do all of those graphics entirely from scratch. Now we had a font. Actually, we had 2 fonts that we used for most of the text stuff that we did. And other than usually use these 2 fonts unless it's something really fancy, we could do anything we wanted. And so it was basically a slideshow where the talent would stand in front of the touch screen and swipe through or
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
forth. That was so much fun. I loved that.
So speaking of that and programs, what are your favorite programs to use? Because you've used a lot of them, been through a lot of programs, even with editing, graphics, whatever you call it. What are your favorite ones?
The one that I use the most, which I'd have to call it my favorite just by virtue of the fact that I know it the best, is Adobe Illustrator. It's different from Photoshop in that although you can take a photo of something real in Photoshop and do stuff with it and make real life look better, Illustrator is entirely comes out of your brain, and the artwork that you make with it can look at every bit as good as a photograph, but because it deals entirely with math instead of basically a grid of colored dots, when you scale that image up or warp it or resize it or whatever, it's always going to be perfect quality. And you can load Photoshop stuff into there and kind of mix the two together, which is just tons of fun.
I will say something about Russ. My logo that I signaturely have, this man drew it on the board one day, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what that is, but it looks cool. I'm going to use it as my logo. And literally, that is my logo. So I have to personally thank you for that. You know what I'm saying?
You're very welcome.
You know?
So I'll get back to you doing graphic design. So I guess you would also, you kind of communicate with directors and the producer, or I guess the producer that tells you what they want as far as a graphic.
Yeah, because it's the producer who writes the story usually in a news environment.
So like when you come, like how much time do you have to kind of put all your graphics in between, I guess, when you come in and when the show starts to air?
In a modern environment like we have today with computers and it's all networked and pre-done like I was talking about, it depends on the graphics still, but you get a lot more time than you used to because the part of the system that puts the picture on television is all automated. So it could be as little as 2 or 3 minutes. And that's happened before where somebody has said, hey, I'm doing a story about Nissan. I need the Nissan logo, for instance. Prepped as an over-the-shoulder graphic, so it can show in over the anchor's, shoulder, and just finding a copy of their logo, cutting it down to the right size, and loading into the system takes no time. One of the projects that I had that went the longest at Channel 4 was a story about parking at the old Music City Center. One of our journalists was doing this, not one of our reporters. This was like an in-depth thing where the city was trying to convert convention center parking for use by people on the street or a local hotel or something like that. And they wanted to show how much of this parking was being taken out because it was something on the order of like 400 parking spaces out of 1,000 that were being lost. So I was asked to make a graphic that showed what happens when all of this goes away. And it took about 2 days to do that particular graphic because it was animated. I got in a little bit into After Effects with it. Did all of my assets in Illustrator that I could get away with. A little bit of Photoshop work.
I think I really want to see that. I mean, I want.
That's a lot.
I really want to see that. Like,
It was a heck of a piece of work. It was something that it was my first time doing something like that. But it was basically just a bunch of cars driving on the screen in one color. and like a third of them driving off of the screen and being replaced with more cars of a different color. But the concept, doing a mock-up, collaborating with the reporter, asking them, okay, this is my idea for how this graphic should work. Does that look right to you? Is very much like working with a client.
Yeah.
Oh, it's totally collaborative.
Yeah.
So do you are you able to kind of also with the directors and producers are able to get your own input?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, yes. One of the things that's very important in working in that kind of environment is keeping in mind that I have some skills that they don't necessarily have. So if they ask for something that's not a good idea, then it's my job to come up with a way, A, to tell them that's not a good idea, B, do it in a way that that doesn't tick them off, and C, not leave them holding the ball. So I got to have something else. As a for instance, I was asked to do one graphic once. The way it was going to be shown on the air, they wanted a gun because the story had to do with guns, except the gun was going to be pointing at the reporter's head.
Oh, wow.
I've seen that happen quite a bit, actually.
That's absolutely something you never, ever do, ever. So
Yeah, because psychologically, that's putting out a bad message.
So we had to turn the gun some other way. And the person who was writing the story, I think at that time, wanted it pointed in a particular way for a particular reason. But that did not go to air in a
Kind of
as
wonder
originally asked
what
for.
was the reasoning to want that gun a certain way.
That's a hidden message right there.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes you're so like attached to a certain thing that it's really, really hard to see it any other way.
Right.
And then some people, whatever, aren't as up for compromise. So
Yeah, well, and there was more to the graphic than just a gun. It was, I forget what it was. It was like a gun and a sword, or a gun and a pen, or it was two different things. What I remember was the gun, because it was the first time that had come up for me. And my supervisor saw the graphic that I was working on and said, all right, we need to have a talk about this.
I think certain people just don't think about it until they see it on air, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm shooting him. Okay.
And
Yeah,
some
but-
people don't even think about it when they see it on
Yeah.
air,
yeah.
which is really dangerous.
Right.
The
But it's
amount of-
that one person that'll look at it and it'll cost a whole big problem.
But conscious versus unconscious. We process so much stuff, subconsciously. Who knows? And then little kids and everything else.
Right.
That's a big
And
part.
you're in a rush. You're just trying to get it done.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes. Like I've done some stuff working with graphic artists, and it's like you're trying to communicate between the graphic artist and like I have a better knowledge than somebody would hire me to do something, and I'm a in between. So they're wanting it like right now, and the client doesn't understand how this minor change is really a major change. You basically have to break down the whole structure of the whole thing again and redesign from the ground up.
Oh, the worst words in the world to hear from a client when you're almost done something is, I have this idea for a really simple edit. This should
Ooh.
be really easy.
I've never had that, but that sounded painful just hearing it.
Well, I mean, but you understand on the creative side what that means. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
like you know.
Right.
That's like, be like, the person that framed this building we're sitting in. It's like, oh, you know what? That foundation would be so much better if the walls are up.
I was recently asked to do a graphic that was someone standing in front of a television screen. And it had been taken, the photograph had been taken in two different exposures, but not at the same time. These new cell phones will do high dynamic range. It does two exposures, it stitches them together, and you can get really bright stuff, really dark stuff, and you can see all of the detail, and it's great. This was not taken that way. It was one picture. Okay, let me take the camera down from my eye, fiddle with the settings, put it back up, and take another picture. And between the screen not being in the same place and the just way overexposed glow all the way around it, it was on front of a brick wall with some really tall, skinny, weird-looking traffic cones in there, and the traffic cones had to come out too. And it was like, yeah, I don't think this is something I can complete in 2 hours. Maybe if I had a couple weeks to work on it, but there's still.
Oh, she didn't know. They didn't want to hear that.
Good thing it was a friend of mine.
Oh.
But yeah.
So that you also work in the world of tech. So does that also help with you and your current job at Channel 4?
It does. As a broadcast engineer, I have to either know how to fix anything that could break in the plant, or I've got to be able to find out how to fix it. And things come up from time to time where we have to come up with emergency workarounds. Everything that we have, for the most part, in the plant, from we're a major network affiliate, and our network stream comes in over a fiber link from Atlanta. Used to be that we just have a satellite dish on the roof, and the satellite dish would feed through a room where somebody's sitting there with all of the commercials. They pop the commercial in the machine and play it out and switch back and forth from the studio. And all. That was called master control, and that's not here anymore.
I actually used to do that in Kentucky.
Right. And a lot of, I think colleges, I think MTSU still has their own master control. Of course, they wouldn't have a what we call a hub anywhere. But to do the master control into the studio comes over fiber, and it goes into an automated switch. That switch is connected to a panel, physical panel, in the plant, and that panel can be operated either from our master equipment room or the control room where they're making the TV show of the day, the news, or our local interest show, or it can be controlled from Atlanta. That switch busted once upon a time.
I was going to ask you that.
Good story.
Yeah. And for that, and because stuff like that happens, and you can't fix that, in a minute. That takes some diagnosis. It takes a while to track down where the problem happened, and it takes a while to figure out what needs to happen to fix it. So everything that we have runs through what are called patch panels. You've got the machine that the machine that I get excited talking about this.
No, you're good.
No, go ahead.
Get the machine that receives the stream from Atlanta. Its output goes into a patch panel, which is a pair of plugs, and it goes from there into the switch. And from there, it goes back to the patch panel before it goes to the next thing. So the idea is if anything dies, like that router, you can take a cord off of the wall, plug it in, and bypass that piece of equipment physically so that it's not causing problems anymore. And then when you need to go from NBC network coverage to local news, you got to unplug it and plug it back in where the studio video comes from. And so viewers notice, and it's our job to figure out, how to fix that and get it fixed. It took us about a day and a half to nail it down. And so it was kind of touch and go, but that's live television.
Yeah, nature of the beast, right?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
What people don't understand is that we need people like you, because they look at television and they have no clue what goes on behind the scenes. They have no clue when something breaks, who fixes it. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good thing.
This is the wonderful Oz. It's the man behind the curtain.
And they never think about you until something bad happens,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Right.
Oh, man. So the curtain, that's the one thing I was missing, and also the smoke and the fire.
Right.
That was,
Yeah.
I knew I was missing something.
Now,
But
if
we
you
can
ever,
make all that happen. You know what I'm saying? Put it all together. We're filmmakers. We can
That's
rig it up and make it work. You have your own Oz.
I smell the beginning of a sitcom here. Behind the scenes at a TV station.
Or maybe just a skit. Maybe a skit. Started out small.
yeah,
Just skit.
I'll say things that happen in news are way funnier than people imagine. Like I tend to love to watch the like at YouTube that have these
The bloopers.
Bloopers, yes. I love those.
Like wardrobe malfunctions.
Right.
People falling. Like the QVC ones are crazy. I know it's not necessarily news, but it's the same kind of
It's still live.
live type of format.
And anything can happen.
Yeah, like Like you cut yourself with a sword, you're trying to demonstrate how strong it is.
I haven't seen that one.
Like the
I
guy,
don't even want to see that.
the guy was talking about how strong the sword was, and he was like, I guess hitting against a brick or something like that, and it broke in half, and then came back at him.
Yikes! My goodness.
You know, it's like, oh,
I don't want to see that.
Can't fix that in post. Fix that at the hospital.
But you know, it's one of those things. It's on the internet for a reason.
Well,
Absolutely.
Wasn't it Jimmy Stewart? I think somebody, one of those actors who was big in the black and white eras, who died in the middle of a shot, and
That wouldn't surprise me.
yeah, he was taking a bow or bending over. No, he was taking a bow. He was taking a bow, and he just kept going, and he fell down dead.
Oh wow.
And when they edited the movie together, they saved the shot by playing the bow to a certain point and then playing the same frames in reverse so that he stood back up. And they had to get a body double to come in and film the rest of it so you couldn't see his face. So that kind of
Wow.
stuff does happen.
Yeah, but like it happened with
Not as much anymore, hopefully.
Bruce. It happened with Bruce Lee's son.
Bruce Lee's son, Brandon. It was like they were supposed to be firing blanks.
And it was a real one.
There was an issue with I can't remember where it happened at, but the train tracks, where they were shooting something on train tracks, and there was a train involved. It was a big insurance thing. I can't even remember how long ago it was. I want to say it's like early 2000s, but I can't remember the specifics. But I know somebody passed away because of it.
And didn't Red Fox also?
I don't know about that one.
I know he like it was another show he was doing, and he was doing the heart attack thing, and he actually had a heart attack.
That does not surprise me.
Sanford and Son, right?
It wasn't Sanford's son. It was a
But
it
that,
was,
Stand-up
that, that, that was
stand-up?
one of his sticks, though. Like,
it was
he
supposed
like,
to be another show because Eddie Murphy was producing it.
Elizabeth. This is a big one. Yeah, but that was like a catch line.
That
for
was his
him.
and so no one took it seriously when
Yeah.
he completely fell out.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he's such a good actor. Like probably laughing at him. It's like the
Yeah.
boy who cried wolf.
They're laughing, but I'm and then a few minutes later they're like, okay, you can get up now, and it was awkward silence. So
And that's wild, though. Really is.
I wanted to get back to your Channel 5. So do you ever had an issue where, let's say, it's not on your station, it's like in network?
Oh, yeah. That happens. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. And when it happens, the way you deal with it really depends on what's going on. If the problem originates on like the morning news show and they're not putting out their graphics right, or as happened once not too long ago, their entire picture was shifted up 22 pixels.
Oh.
Oh,
I don't know
goodness.
why, but one of the things that affects for us is if you've ever watched the morning news shows, you'll see a little ticker at the bottom of the screen, and it's got the news headlines on it, and somehow miraculously they're your local news. That comes from us at our station, and their picture being 22 pixels out of alignment meant that the little gray bar that they'd baked into the picture for their news ticker to go across was in totally the wrong place. So we had to take because the ticker is automatically triggered from their signal. There's a bunch more information in a TV picture than you might realize. Way more than just picture and sound. One of the things that's included in that is a trigger for our machine that puts a little ticker on there. And our ticker looked like we had screwed up. And so we had to take it out of commission for a day. And I wound up calling the network, and they said, we're investigating this. We'll get back to you. Well, they got back to me, and they knew they had a problem because they'd heard it from somebody else, but they didn't know what the problem was. Fortunately for them, they had a block of time coming up about an hour or two later where it was going to be all local content all across the whole country. So what they told us was they were going to shut down everything and restart it up again. And I am so glad I was not in that plant when that happened, because some of this stuff is scary when it turns off and turns back on again, because it takes minutes for it to come back. This is not a Mac. It's not an iPhone. It's off, and when you try to bring it back on, it could be 5 minutes to a half an hour sometimes before it's ready to go.
Half
And
an
then
hour?
somebody
In some
listening to
cases.
this may not understand how long that is. How long 30 seconds is or 10 seconds is.
for television.
And television?
Television, live TV.
That is a long time.
No commercials.
It's time and money.
yeah.
Oh, it's definitely
make
money.
goods.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a word for it. If you mess up somebody's commercial, you got to make it good. You got to play their commercial after the fact. There are stations around, I'm sure probably most stations have run presidential campaign ads or governor campaign ads days, maybe a week after the election because they messed something up and they have to run it, and you got to make it good because they paid for the ad.
Oh man.
And that's completely useless at that point.
It happens.
So,
That's why sometimes I do see that, and I'm like, it's over with. Whatever it is, like, why are they continuing? I understand now. I did not know that. Now the audience knows that. Thank you, Russ.
or even like certain events that probably like a few days afterwards, you may see a commercial for it.
It can happen.
It's like useless money, but so like maybe like a Victoria, she may look at a film and let's say can't necessarily look at it as like a regular film. You may look at it within details. So are you the same way with news?
Yeah, so you're asking if I watch it as an engineer rather than just as a viewer?
Right.
Yes.
Very often. Yeah. I kind of internally rag on everybody, the networks, the local people. I'm like,
So
"Come
it
on,
drives
guys,
you
get your act
crazy.
together." Oh my God, yes. Well, because back in the day when local stations had their master controls on site, you would receive the network programming off of a satellite dish, and the network will call around and tell you, okay, the morning show ends at 7:59 and 48 seconds. But that's by their clock. It's got to take time to bounce up off of the satellite and come back to you. So what you do is you sit around with a stopwatch and you figure out, all right, how much of a delay is that for us? And then you set your own clocks on that delay, or you figure out how to compensate for that. And so when the morning show goes off, your commercial comes on, and there should be about a third or a half of a second of just black, and it's just enough to, show that this thing has ended and the next thing is on. And a lot of the times now, with all of the automation that's built in, the satellite signal is received hundreds of miles away, and, you've got to rely on those people to calculate the delay correctly. And if the delay isn't right, then you'll cut off the last half a second or 2 seconds or sometimes 15 or 20 seconds of the program that you were supposed to be showing to your viewers because, somebody hit a wrong button or something. So, yeah, you see if you watch carefully, you see a lot more little minor bloopers like cutting off the end of a show or 3 or 4 seconds of black before going into your local TV program.
When it shows like the the network logo.
Sometimes. Now, one of the networks has an animated version of their logo that if you ever see it on air, it tells you that, it doesn't say this, but what it means is that you're supposed to be looking at local commercials and they are not being played for whatever reason. And that's some more of those make goods we were talking about.
Now, isn't it kind of the same way with like live sports, like a football game, basketball, something like that?
It can be. The big challenge with those is the end of the game. I mean, everybody knows that the game starts at 4:30 p.m. But when the game starts at 8:30 p.m. or 9 p.m. and it's supposed to be over at 10:30 or 11, if it might go long, everybody's just sitting around twiddling their thumbs going, all right, well, I've got all the news stories written for the next program. The engineer on duty is sitting there going, will they hurry up, please, and get this thing done? And once the referee calls the end of the game, the network will call around. Actually, they've got a big box that announces it, but still calls are made sometimes. And they'll say, okay, well, the game ended, so we've got another 15 minutes and 26 seconds of commentary, and you can start your news program at this time. And everybody just sits around waiting to find out when the news is going to start. That's the fun part about being a broadcast engineer who works the night shift during football season.
Oh.
And I used to be the overnight guy. So very often it came down to me to be the one who had to, stay late or show up a little bit early because the afternoon guy wanted to go home, and he has about 15 years seniority on me.
Yeah.
So
When a game goes into overtime, that's just not something y'all care for.
you know what? It happens, and when the game goes into overtime, we get paid overtime. So we're not complaining too loudly.
And you're just sitting there.
Yeah, that's a win for a win right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Sitting on the clock, making money.
Now, do you do graphics for freelance as well?
I do, yes, because I'm working as an engineer at the station. Because it's a big corporation, they don't let us do anything else. So it's all just graphics for me.
So outside.
Or, excuse me, all just engineering for me. Graphics is entirely outside, yeah.
So you're able to do graphics outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's any that you have done lately?
Yeah, I've got a friend who's working with a couple artists. He plays bass, and he is getting into freelance video production. And he's had me do some logos for him and a couple other people lately.
So that's something you're looking to do more of?
Oh yeah, it's a lot more fulfilling to be on the creative side for me than it is to be on the engineering side. I'm grateful for having done the engineering. I understand a lot more of the process and what goes into making things happen. I'm getting that creative itch again. So.
Okay.
So is it more, I guess, like relaxing to be a bit more creative?
There's very little relaxing in the TV, movie, media business.
But you can develop your craft.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
It might not be more relaxing, but it's more fulfilling. I mean, that's basically the word. It's what's in my heart to do.
And with Nashville, that's just filled with artists to work with. So you get a ton of practice.
Yeah.
Well, Russ, we're at our 30 mark, and I want to thank you for taking time out to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, guys.
Now, you have any like social medias you want to?
I'm on Instagram as AJBlue98 and pretty much everywhere else, but I haven't really kickstarted my my freelance yet, but that's coming. So
yeah, it is, especially after you give me your card.
Stay tuned. Well, again, thank you, and I'm Kevin Mumphrey with Victoria V.A. Jones and Karsten Hype Ferguson.
Yeah,
got it right this time. Well, ladies
Peace
and
out.
gentlemen, that is a wrap.